Hello and welcome to my first lab guide slash demo of an exploit slash I want to teach you in this series how to hack with a clear and effective methodology instead of just showing you the attack path. And so we're going to be starting with this lab here. As you can tell by the title of this video, we are going to do um, we're going to do this lab called Azure Blob Container to initial access, and this is going to be one of the many ways that you're going to get access into the Azure infrastructure. And from there, we will continue on to utilize the access in a separate video associated with a different lab. But they'll both be out, so you can continue right away and we can learn the whole thing. Or if you're just listening, I'm going to make it in a way where I'm explaining everything, so you can probably just listen to my labs whilst you're doing anything as well. So let's go ahead and get started. I want you to forget about this stuff. Forget about the kind of things that labs give you in order to give you an easy time. When we're doing labs in a platform like this, and actually in most of the platforms that I've been on, for cloud labs, the platforms usually use a specific company and they expand that to include all the labs. And so that company in this case is Mega Big Tech. And so if we're just looking at Mega Big Tech as a target, say we just have Mega Big Tech and we are out to hack them, and we're just this guy and we're out to hack them. So what do we do when we have a domain? Well, one of many things, and I'll show you other OPSEC and external enumerations in the rest of the labs in the series. But one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to enumerate the DNS of this domain. And in enumerating that with DNS enum, plugging into it this big subdomain word list, we get these domains. And one of them over here is a website, dev.megabigtech.com. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Here. And as you can see, it's not a web page, and it also says query parameter name comp. And I'm going to explain what that means in the future. But just this alone should be enough to tell you that this website is being hosted on a Azure container. So just like you can host with AWS buckets, you can also do the same here on Azure through containers. But let's say that we wanted to make sure and we wanted to see what's going on with this. Well, in that case, as with any website, we're going to pull out burp. And taking a look at burp, you can also see that in the response, we find this header server called Microsoft HTTP API. And this is sufficient, indication that we're dealing with a blob. And so I just wanted to give that point because every time we're doing these things, these simulations, these labs, we're going to be not wanting to follow the lab attack path. We're not going to be wanting to strictly find the flag and move on. The only thing, or the most important thing that we're going to be doing, is extracting from every single step a methodology and stacking them all together into one big protocol that we apply whenever we find such and such indications. So here we found that this is a blob site, and so now we're going to commence the blob site methodology, and I'm going to teach you that. So in our DNS enum command, we found this website, and the good thing about DNS enum is that instead of just finding the subdomain as would, FUF or Dirbuster or whatever you use, aka please use FUF, it's the best one. We also find the CNAME, which is this MBT website .blob.core.windows.net. And so this obviously MBT stands for mega big tech and then website. But the rest of this domain is all default in accordance with Blob default Blob domains. And so let's talk a little bit about that. So most services, or actually all services on Azure, have default domain names. So vaults, things that have keys and secrets and things like that, it has this default domain, vaultname.vault.azure.net. So it's always going to have that vault.azure.net. And even the authentication APIs that you use to log in, when you log in, you're going to be using default API names for the specific thing that you're getting access to. Like Graph is going to have this graph.microsoft.com, and login.microsoftonline.com is, I believe, management. So with that out of the way, let's get into the blobs is what we're working on and the domains for blobs. So depending on what kind of blob it is, what kind of storage rather it is, and what kind of data that storage is containing, what are the blobs formatted in, then this is going to be the domain format of those things. So if it's a blob storage, as in our case, it's just normal blob storage, blob object files, images, text, perfect for website, then it's going to be blob.core.windows.net. Now, this is what we're using. However, it's not enabled in this case, but it can be enabled that the static web app that we're dealing with, the developer could have enabled that it's called this. It could have enabled that it's called this, but he didn't in this case. It's not on by default. And so yeah, now I showed you the website, I showed you what's there, and let's talk about firstly the fact that there are other services that can also be used as websites, just kind of as an awareness for you. Apps can be used as websites. These things can also be used as websites, and you can access things through those publicly facing domains, just to kind of get an awareness. And we will be doing attacks on other things like Logic Apps and Azure Apps in the future lab videos. And so in these cases where there are publicly facing domains that are default and have default things, well, guess what? They also have default directories and default files and APIs and endpoints. And so for blob containers, they're going to have these default directories, $web, and $web is going to be reflective of the root of that website. The root meaning it's going to be allowing you to reach the blobs within the container, and the blobs are the files of the container called by default $web. And so just to kind of give you an awareness, let's say for apps being used as sites, they can also have default directories, and these default directories are as follows. These things: well-node, home, API, SCM, and debug console. SCM and debug console, you know, being critical attack paths because they use a console on the browser for you to use commands on, just like a Linux terminal. And they do that through this kudu console that seems to be the norm. So yeah, now that we know a little bit about what is default, and you know, I'm telling you that web is the root. So why don't we just go to web and access the actual web page? So let's do that. So we accessed it, and what does it say? There's a different error now. A different error always means that you have more information. You just have to kind of extract what that information means based on the different error. So in this case, resource not found is obviously, if you're any way familiar with any little bit of web hacking, it means that you got in, but the page that you're trying to access, like a local file inclusion, is not existent. And so in this case, resource not found means that yes, this directory does exist, but the file that we didn't even put doesn't exist. So let's try, index.php, and it says blob not found. So index.php is obviously, this is even like an even more generous error code for you, but index.php does not exist. So, fuzzing for extensions, we can see that um, index.html does work. However, um, this is a very poor methodology to just type things in the URL. So, what is the protocol for this? If we know that these exist, then is it possible to just fuzz specifically for what could exist? Well, you should do both. You should fuzz for everything as you normally do, but you should also fuzz for these things that I made over here. This list of kind of standard and default blob names for static files hosted on containers. And so I'm going to take this word list, put it in, and then use this fuff command to fuzz and find everything that could exist instead of just typing in the URL and getting lucky. And the thing about this fuff command is that it doesn't work with Azure, and actually a lot of times you'll find when you're trying to use fuff, things don't work unless you add the specific headers. That's why people, standard methodology, they take the file, they copy the file off the burp suite request, and then they do things on them, and then they fuff on them to fuzz for hidden directories, or they use SQL map on them to find SQL vulnerabilities, SQL injections. And so fuff is great, it's free, and it's the fastest because it's made out of Go. However, it's a little bit inconsistent just because sometimes you want to do it really quickly with a command like this, but the more reliable way is to include all the headers. And so let's take this and see what we find. So that is 90,000 attempts to do. So while it's doing that, let's talk a little bit about what's going on with this blob site and how it all works. So we know now that a container has default directories that are reflective of the containers within the blob that is being hosted or within the blob that is hosting the site. But what's even more convenient for you as an attacker, not as a defender, is that it also has default parameters. So we have these default parameters for all blobs, and these include rest type container. Rest type is going to be used to indicate whether you are targeting a blob or a container in your API. Do you want to use this variable comp to list the blobs in this container, or perhaps you want to change this to, blob, and then here I think it's called versions, and check the versions of the blob, see if there are prior versions that the developer is unaware that it's still accessible, and then you can get secrets from it. So in this case, since we know that this exists, let's see if it's secured and if this is disabled, or if we can just list all of the blobs instead of fuzzing and waiting for, 100,000, about 100,000 attempts to be made for us to know what's on the website. So in that case, we formulated this URL. So this is the default container domain, followed by the container that we want to check the blobs of, and then the parameters that that allow us to check the blobs. So using this, go over here, and as you can see, we get all the blobs of the container. We get here what we already found, which is index.html, and as you can see here, froze on me. As you can see here, we did find index.html, And this is why FUF is still essential to use, because no matter what, like as you can see, even on the cloud, it still works, and there's no default blocking or necessary rate limiting, which is odd, but it still works, and you should use it. You should add a list that includes default blob directories and default things of cloud assets into your usual list that you use to FUF for recursively for directories and files and things like that. So for me personally, I took everything in sec lists, and I used everything in sec lists to make kind of one all-encompassing word list. I removed things that don't work, and I removed duplicates, and then I use that recursively to find directories and files, and it seems to have been working so far for everything that I do. But yeah, your methodology can be different for your word lists. You might want to make a small one, a medium one, and then a big one to kind of use small things first in order to find low-hanging fruit. Maybe you're stuck, or you have a lot of time, then you can use a giant one. But yeah, getting back into here, we found a lot of other blobs as well, as you can see, and I'm going to skip going through every single one of them. But long story short, we don't really find anything too valuable. So now let's go back and talk a little bit about the parameters and the queries that are available for you to use. So as you saw, we used rest type equals container and then comp equals list to list the blobs, but you can also use rest type blob and then like something like comp equals metadata to get the metadata of the blob. You can also see the properties, just like any properties for any file, and the ACL access control list of the container, snapshots if there are snapshots, and things like that. So a little bit more on kind of uncommon queries that you can use. As you can see what I mentioned before, we can see the versions of the blob or the file or whatever it is. See snapshots, what's deleted if the developer has deleted something and it's still accessible, soft deleted. You can see statistics, active leases, block list. We can check the tier of the blob, so different blobs have different tiers, and then we can actually check the page list as well. And so not only do you not need to fuzz, and you can just list the blobs of each container, but you can also then just go ahead and use this to list all the pages. So things are very convenient for you as an attacker if a website is hosted on Azure. You just need to have this awareness that that a website can be hosted on Azure, and that if that's the case, then you have all of these default conditions allowing you to get very easily into all the pages and have a mapped out view of the website. And so now let's use one of these to check what is if there are versions for what we're trying to look at, which is the directory, web, which is the container. So let's go ahead and see. Now, I do want to say that in this curl command, we are using x-ms-version, and why we're using that is because this version is required for this parameter value. Versions is not available for previous x-ms versions, and so you have to use 2019 12-12 or above, I'm pretty sure. And so let's go ahead and use this in our terminal. And as you can see, we did find versions, but let me clean this up real quick. I'm gonna tell GPT to organize it instead of doing, JQ or whatever it is. By the way, over here you can see that I also made the fuff command in ChatGPT, and I told it to add all the headers, turning it into a giant one-liner in order for the fuff command to work, because like I said, it won't work without the headers. And that's why if you want to be reliable with your fuff commands, include the headers from burp sweep, and if you want to be quick about it, you copy the headers, copy the burp sweep request, put it in ChatGPT, and let ChatGPT do the work. This isn't necessarily because you what's it called? You don't want to manually formulate the command. Sure, you can manually formulate commands, copy each header, blah blah blah, put it in a text pad, start manipulating it, and trial and error until it works, or however, maybe you're a master at it and it works the first time. The fact of the matter is, if you're going to do everything manually, you're going to be spending a lot of time that you don't need to spend. And so let's say I plug this in. I say fuff command, put this basic command and then tell it to transform it and tell it to add all the headers. Well, then I have time to do other things for the engagement. I have time to do other things in the lab. I have time to research. I have time to learn about this other thing while this is being done. Or I have time to ask somebody something on Discord. Talking to somebody or doing something. The possibilities, like I can do anything in that time instead of wasting it formulating this command or organizing this in whatever method I have. And so ChatGPT is a great asset for you to increase your speed and efficiency. And as you can see here, we found versions for what is it? We found a version for this file called script-transfer.zip that we didn't see before. And how it works with blobs in a container is the version ID is going to have this format. So it's going to have the year, the month, and then whatever this is. And so if we take this version, and just like AWS or any cloud assets, we take the version and then we take the asset and then we use a command to get that version of the asset. And so we have uncovered this file with this version, and this is obviously a zip file not included in the website. There's no way that this could be that the developer could have wanted this. So so here, you can also tell what's his name, GPT, make the command to get the zip file, include version. And then even then you could do something else, but I already have it over here. So I have this command, and as you can see, the format is like this. Again, we have to include the x-ms version for it to work, and the URL of getting this version of the file is the container / the directory, and then the file / the blob, and then as a parameter version ID, with the value of that parameter being the version ID that I showed you. And then you just output that into the same name in order to stay consistent. So we take that, now we have it here, and let's unzip it, and we got intrausers.ps1 and stale account. So let's go ahead and remove. Actually, now let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at the other one first. Stale computer accounts. So as you can see, we got some creds from here, and let's take a look at the other one. So we got Mega Big Tech 1, 2, 3, and in the other one we got these creds, which includes a username. And so you can click on the next video in order to see the full methodology that is involved with finding creds, what to do with finding password, password with no username, spraying, all that, and then internal enumeration if anything works and we find valid creds, internal enumeration, situational awareness, and another attack path. And these creds are associated with another lab that you can click on. I'm going to try to put it in the description or on the video, and we can continue off from there. But thank you very much for watching. This is my first one of the series, so I know it might not be as kind of effective at teaching you, but I think maybe the fifth 5 to 10 more videos, and I'll have a good methodology of teaching everything for these videos. I really want to make them so that you're eating or you're on your way to work or something and you don't have time to do a lab, or you don't have time to do labs all the time and pummel through like 10, 20, 50 labs. I just want to make it so that I can explain it to you whether you're watching or just listening, and you can gain knowledge from not just the attack path but the theory, and getting kind of absorbing real usable knowledge for the future. So that's kind of what my goals are with these videos. I want them to be something for you and for you to learn from. That being said, I'll see you in the next video that includes these creds. Actually, let me get you the name just in case you get lost. So I'll see you to continue this entire attack path. I'll see you in unlock access with Azure Key Vault. And yeah, I'll see you there, and let's do a bunch of things with those creds. Thank you very much for watching, and please like and subscribe. Please message me on LinkedIn or Discord or Twitch or here, or comment if you want to talk about security or cloud, or if you want some any resources or anything like that. So thank you very much, and see you later.